Meghan Markle sat between Susanna Reid and Ed Balls, and the breakfast sofa carried tension that felt different from typical celebrity interviews. She'd actually come alone, no Harry, an arrangement itself that had generated headlines before a single question was asked. The interview began with pleasantries, the usual breakfast television warmth. Then Susanna asked why Meghan had actually made this specific trip, given everything that had reportedly gone wrong with the arrangements. What Meghan said made Susanna's expression sharpen. What Susanna said next, calm, precise, absolutely relentless, would dominate British breakfast conversation for the rest of the week. Because Susanna Reid had spent over a decade extracting truth from people determined to avoid it. And this morning, with a story full of genuine contradictions already circulating before Meghan even sat down, that skill was about to be tested against someone with far more to explain than usual. This is the interview Britain woke up to. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and let's see what happened. The Good Morning Britain studio had its usual early morning energy, cameras warming up, Susanna Reid and Ed Balls reviewing final notes before the red light came on. This was appointment viewing for millions of Britons, the show that had defined ITV's breakfast hour for over a decade. Meghan arrived precisely on schedule, an entourage smaller than her usual but still present. She settled onto the sofa between the two presenters, offering handshakes that felt polished rather than warm. "Meghan, welcome to Good Morning Britain." "Susanna, Ed, thank you for having me. We're delighted, especially given everything that's apparently happened around this particular visit," Susanna continued. "There's quite a lot to unpack. I'm happy to discuss my time here." "Let's start with something rather significant," Susanna said, settling into her interviewer posture. "You're here without Harry, and reportedly without your children as well. Given the security arrangements reportedly falling through, why did you actually decide to come at all?" Meghan's expression remained composed. "I had personal engagements requiring my presence." "Personal engagements significant enough to travel without your family during what was supposed to be a family reunion trip? That seems like a substantial shift from the original plan." "Circumstances required flexibility." "Circumstances like the Home Office declining full police protection outside royal properties? That's rather specific circumstance, not general flexibility. Why did the children ultimately stay behind?" "Security decisions are made with their well-being as priority." "Then why are you here without that same protection consideration applying to yourself? If security wasn't adequate for the children, what's different about your own safety calculation?" "Adult security needs differ from children's requirements." "They differ, certainly, but you're still choosing to be here in a country where your own family apparently couldn't be adequately protected. That still seems like a decision worth explaining more fully than you have." "There are reports you're attending Kris Jenner's birthday celebrations while here," Susanna continued, checking her notes. "Is that accurate? And if so, why prioritize that over remaining with your family during this complicated period?" Meghan's composure flickered slightly. "I maintain various friendships internationally. Kris Jenner specifically, though. That's rather notable timing, prioritizing a celebrity birthday party during a trip that was originally about family reconciliation, especially given your children ultimately couldn't join due to security concerns." "My schedule involves multiple commitments." "Multiple commitments that apparently outweighed staying with your family during a trip specifically meant to reconnect them with their grandfather? Help me understand that prioritization." "You're mischaracterizing a complex situation." "Then help me understand the actual complexity, because from outside, this looks like choosing a celebrity social event over family reconciliation efforts." "Friendships require maintenance regardless of other circumstances. Even during a week when your own children are absent because security couldn't be arranged? That timing still seems worth addressing more directly than you have so far." "Harry arrived separately, days before you," Susanna pressed forward. "That's unusual for what was billed as a family trip. What actually happened with the original travel plans?" "Logistics required separate arrangements." Logistics? Or did the security situation actually change your plans midway through? Reports suggest the police protection offer only covered royal properties, not the full visit. Is that why the children stayed in America? Security decisions involve many factors. That's not actually answering my question. Did inadequate security protection specifically cause your children to remain behind while you traveled anyway? Meghan grabbed her water. I won't discuss specific security details publicly. You've discussed security extensively in previous interviews, court proceedings, documentaries. Why is this specific situation suddenly off limits? Ongoing security matters require discretion. Discretion that seems selectively applied whenever questions become specific rather than general. That pattern itself is worth noting. Harry reportedly declined and then accepted a Buckingham Palace invitation. Susanna continued, unrelenting. Palace sources suggest confusion about deadlines and communication. What actually happened there? I wasn't directly involved in those specific arrangements. Not involved? Yet you're his wife, presumably aware of major decisions about royal accommodation. Are you suggesting you had no knowledge of that entire situation? Harry manages certain logistics independently. Independently enough that his own wife wasn't informed about accepting or declining a Buckingham Palace stay? That seems rather significant to be entirely separate from your awareness. Marriages don't require complete information sharing about every logistical decision. Most marriages don't involve decisions this significant remaining entirely separate, though. A palace invitation isn't a minor scheduling detail. It's a substantial decision about family accommodation that most spouses would discuss together. The divorce rumors, Susanna said, shifting but maintaining pressure. They've been persistent for months. Given you're here without Harry, without your children, under circumstances that seem increasingly complicated, what's your response to those ongoing reports? Tabloid speculation without foundation. Speculation that gains more traction given your current circumstances. Separate travel, absent children, prioritizing a celebrity party over family time. Does any of that actually support your denial? Every choice I make gets media scrutiny disproportionate to its actual meaning. Or perhaps the scrutiny exists because the choices themselves raise legitimate questions. What would you say to people who see this specific trip as evidence supporting the divorce speculation, rather than contradicting it? I'd say they're drawing unfounded conclusions. Unfounded based on what alternative explanation? You still haven't actually provided one for why this trip looks so different from the family reunion originally announced. Let me ask directly, Susanna said, her tone unwavering. Is your marriage currently stable? Given everything about this trip specifically. My marriage remains solid. Solid marriages don't typically involve separate international travel, absent children, and attendance at celebrity parties instead of remaining together during complicated circumstances. Can you address that contradiction directly? You're drawing conclusions from limited information. I'm asking you to provide the fuller information that would actually resolve these questions. So far, you've offered generalities rather than specifics. Ed interjected gently. Perhaps we could discuss the actual purpose behind. These are legitimate questions Britain deserves answers to, Susanna said, especially given how much public interest and resources have gone into planning this visit. I don't owe anyone a detailed accounting of my marriage. You don't owe details, no, but you chose this platform, this interview, this conversation. Vague denial without any actual substance doesn't resolve legitimate public questions. It simply confirms there's something specific being avoided. Your father, Susanna continued, shifting terrain but maintaining directness. Thomas Markle. Given all this focus on family reconciliation with Harry's side, has your own father come up during this visit at all? Meghan's expression closed completely. My relationship with my father remains private. Private, yet you're specifically here for family-related purposes according to official narratives. Doesn't that make his continued absence from any reconciliation efforts rather notable? Different family relationships require different approaches. Different how, specifically? He's elderly. He's had serious health complications. He's publicly pleading for reconciliation. Yet you're prioritizing time with a reality television personality instead. That comparison seems worth addressing directly. You're conflating separate issues that have nothing to do with each other. They're connected by the theme of this entire trip: family reconciliation. If that's genuinely the priority, his continued absence from any effort seems relevant, not separate. I don't have to justify every personal choice to a television audience, Meghan said, her composure cracking slightly. You're a public figure who specifically chose this trip, this platform, this conversation. Justification isn't unreasonable when your choices directly involve matters of significant public interest, security arrangements, family relationships, marital stability. This entire interview has become an interrogation. This interview has become direct questioning about legitimate public interest topics you've chosen to be part of by accepting this appearance. That's not interrogation. That's basic accountability journalism. I came here to discuss meaningful engagement, not have my life picked apart. Meaningful engagement includes addressing the actual circumstances surrounding your visit, rather than only the parts that present favorably. So far, every difficult topic has received deflection rather than substance. I came here expecting fair treatment, Meghan said, standing up slightly. This is fair treatment. Fair means asking direct questions about your own choices and expecting actual answers rather than vague deflection. You've provided almost nothing specific about any of the genuinely newsworthy elements of this particular visit. Every question has felt hostile from the start. Every question has been direct about publicly relevant circumstances you've created through your own choices this week. If directness feels hostile, that discomfort exists in the actual situation, not in my questioning of it. I won't continue sitting here being attacked, Meghan said, grabbing her purse. You're not being attacked. You're being asked to explain decisions that carry genuine public interest. Why your children aren't here. Why you're attending celebrity events instead of remaining with family. Whether your marriage is actually stable given all these circumstances. Those aren't personal attacks. They're the exact questions this situation demands. Meghan moved toward the exit. You've been completely unprofessional. Susanna's response remained calm, measured, final. Unprofessional would be inventing claims. Everything I've asked traces back to documented, reported circumstances surrounding your own trip. The unprofessional element here is walking away from direct questions about your own choices rather than actually addressing them. Meghan paused at the studio door. History will remember how unfairly I was treated today. History will remember someone who couldn't explain basic decisions about her own well-documented trip on live breakfast television. That's not unfair treatment. That's simply accountability you weren't prepared to provide. Meghan left. The studio fell into a brief, stunned silence. Ed finally spoke. Well, that wasn't quite the segment we planned. Susanna turned to address the camera directly. I want to be clear about what just happened. Every question I asked was legitimate, directly relevant to documented circumstances surrounding her own trip this week. The security situation, the absent children, the celebrity party attendance, the marriage questions. These aren't invented controversies. They're existing public questions deserving direct answers. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What we witnessed instead was someone unable to engage with reasonable scrutiny about decisions she herself made. That's revealing in itself. We've had guests facing genuine scandal stay and address difficult topics directly. She couldn't handle straightforward questions about her own choices this week. Ed added his perspective. I tried gently redirecting a few times, hoping for more constructive conversation. But every attempt just seemed to create space for avoidance rather than actual engagement. That's precisely right, Susanna said. Sometimes direct questions, however uncomfortable, are actually the more respectful approach. They treat someone as capable of handling adult conversation about their own choices, rather than needing protection from basic accountability. She straightened in her chair. This isn't about personal animosity toward anyone. It's about maintaining the same standard we apply to every guest on this sofa, regardless of their platform or previous media relationships. The footage aired that morning. ITV made no edits. The clips that spread captured the confrontation. If security wasn't adequate for the children, what's different about your own safety calculation? That's not actually answering my question. Solid marriages don't typically involve separate international travel, absent children, and attendance at celebrity parties instead of remaining together. That comparison seems worth addressing directly. That's not interrogation. That's basic accountability journalism. History will remember someone who couldn't explain basic decisions about her own well-documented trip. Meghan's team released a statement calling the interview an ambush characterized by hostile questioning that ignored the complexity of the security situation entirely. Susanna addressed the criticism the following day. Ambush suggests deception about format or intent. Everyone appearing on Good Morning Britain understands we ask direct questions about relevant public matters. Every topic discussed, the security arrangements, the absent children, the Kris Jenner event, the marriage speculation, was already publicly reported. I simply asked her to address them directly. She added, "We've interviewed people facing genuine political crises who managed to stay and engage honestly. Someone couldn't handle 15 minutes of direct questions about her own trip. That contrast speaks for itself." For Susanna Reid, the interview became another demonstration of what over a decade hosting British breakfast television had taught her: the ability to maintain composure and precision while asking questions that mattered, regardless of the guest's discomfort. For Meghan Markle, it was particularly damaging given the timing. This wasn't distant tabloid speculation. It was direct questioning about choices made that very week, choices already generating headlines before she'd even sat down. Being unable to navigate straightforward questions from Susanna Reid, walking out on live morning television, exposed contradictions no publicist could fully manage afterward. But for the millions watching their breakfast television that morning, something else emerged. The contrast between Susanna's calm, persistent professionalism and Meghan's escalating discomfort with basic accountability told its own story. Susanna asked why the children stayed behind. Meghan deflected into generalities. Susanna asked about the Kris Jenner party. Meghan minimized the timing. Susanna asked her to reconcile the marriage denial with the week's actual events. Meghan walked out entirely. And in that departure, in that inability to simply answer direct questions about her own very recent, very public choices, everything anyone needed to know about the gap between narrative and accountability became impossible to ignore. Some people can handle direct questions with grace. Others prove they have no genuine answers at all. Susanna offered straightforward professional journalism. Meghan couldn't withstand it. British breakfast television had asked the questions Britain actually wanted answered. Meghan chose departure over honesty. That's the whole story. Over a decade of British breakfast television, direct questions about a trip that was making headlines that very week. And she couldn't handle 15 minutes of accountability about her own choices. What does that tell you about the difference between narrative and truth? If you want more content that recognizes when directness reveals what deflection couldn't, subscribe, turn on notifications, drop a like. More directness, more clarity, more of what a decade of breakfast television teaches you about separating narrative from truth.